ladies, braves and gentlemen, have you ever heard Jesus' true message?
And this is coming from the Talmud of Emmanuel, full text, PDF. The discovery of the Talmud. In 1963, a Swiss-born man named Albert Meier, who the world known as Billy Meier, and his ex-Greek Orthodox priest friend Issa Rashid took an afternoon walk along a roadway a little to the south of the old city of Jerusalem. And during that afternoon walk, Albert Meier happened to glance upwards and spied a small opening in the ground that took his interest. Finding himself curious, Albert Meier took a torch light from his backpack and examined the opening, which was found to continue inward. And so Albert and his friend Issa Rashid dug out enough of the surrounding earth to allow them to gain entrance into some sort of chamber. What they both found after crawling inside was an old tomb in a state of disrepair and half filled with earth. However, after clearing more of the soil away, Albert Meier and Issa Rashid discovered a package beneath a flat rock, which they took back to Issa Rashid's home to examine. The package was said to be about 60 centimeters long and 25 centimeters wide, and was found to hold 4 separate scrolls of Aramaic writings, which took the name of the Talmud of Jmmanuel. Luckily, Issa Rashid had some Palestinian background in his family, and so he found he could read the old Aramaic text. And the first thing that Issa Rashid noticed was that the title page showed that Judas Iscariot had authored this collection of spiritual knowledges on behalf of his teacher and guide, who was named Emmanuel. Issa Rashid also noted extraterrestrial links within the Talmud, and it was made clear that the real father of the biblical Adam was named Semjaza, who was a distant traveler from the far reaches of mankind's universe and an aid to El, or God. It became very clear to both Issa Rashid and Albert Meier that this collection of ancient scrolls, much like the Book of Enoch and other so-called apocryphal writings, was going to be considered heretical because of its content, which strongly contradicted the popular biblical teachings of the later-day established churches. Not only were extraterrestrial links presented in the Talmud, but it was also made clear that Judas Iscariot was actually the friend and student and official scribe recorder of Master Emmanuel. The scrolls also stated that Judas Iscariot never did spite his friend and teacher Emmanuel in the run-up to the biblical crucifixion event, as the real culprit of that venomous act was a man named Judas Iscariot, who was the son of Simeon, the Pharisee. The translation. Because of the nature of the revelations made clear in the teachings of the Talmud, Issa Rashid offered to translate the document in secret, in the hope that the finished version could be made available to the world. Issa Rashid spent a few months checking the highlights to the Talmud and imparting them to his friend Albert Meier. And then Issa Rashid began a formal translation in August 1963 into German, Albert Meier's native language. And after a year in India, Albert Meier continued onward. Meanwhile, Issa Rashid worked on the German translation of the Talmud of Emmanuel, which he completed up to the 36th chapter, and which he posted in 1970 in 2 separate packages to the address in the home of Albert Meier's parents. The postal office in Nuthal forwarded 2 packages unto him, and in the same roundabout manner, Albert Meier also received a personal letter from Issa that spoke about the translation project becoming known to certain authorities for which resulted in him fleeing to Jerusalem to a refugee camp in Lebanon along with his family. However, Issa Rashid's presence also became known to the Israeli authorities, and the refugee camp was bombed during the Israeli air raid. And this air raid forced Issa Rashid to flee again to Baghdad without the scrolls, where he had posted his final letter to Albert Meier. Sadly, in 1976, Albert Meier learned that Issa Rashid and his entire family were assassinated in Baghdad shortly after posting that last letter. Who really wrote the Talmud of Jmmanuel? Well, mostly the body of the Talmud was penned by Emmanuel's official scribe, Judas Iscariot, during the life and times leading up to and following the crucifixion event. Though to trace the point where the Talmud was originally finalized, we will need to examine what some people believe to be more controversial aspects of the Master Emmanuel's life, which takes investigation to the tomb of Joseph Erasmus and then onwards into India. And here comes some more of the so-called Apocrypha, in that the Talmud of Emmanuel makes it very clear that the Master Emmanuel, Jesus, never did die on the cross. He only fell into a trance-like condition. And inside the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, Emmanuel was received by a team of Hindu healers before he set off to India to continue his teachings. In fact, it is believed by many scholars that the full story was only ever completed in India in the early 2nd century. Also, there is a great deal in the letter Issa Rashid sent that stated that he had been persecuted by two different groups, both Christian and Jews, which was to be anticipated because the roads were not favorable towards either religion. The letter was headed Baghdad, September 14, 1974. There was a series of raids during June 1820 and 1974. These were Israeli air raids upon several refugee camps in southwest Lebanon, reported to be in retaliation for a guerrilla incursion in Kashmir in northern Israel, June 13. It is believed that the June 18th raid was designed to eliminate the scrolls, and that the raids upon several other refugee camps on the following 2 days, June 19th and 20th, were intended to divert attention away from the real reason for the first raid. Of evidence stating that after Emmanuel's genuine death in Kashmir region, early 2nd century, that the scrolls were carried back to the Palestinian and Anatolian region by Emmanuel's oldest son, Joseph. And Joseph evidently released a second copy of the teachings somewhere in the region, since that copy found its way into the hands of the apostle Matthew. However, Joseph also preserved and hid the original scrolls within the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, just south of the old city of Jerusalem, and there they lay until Albert Meier and Issa Rashid rediscovered them in 1963. Let's also be aware that it's made clear in the Talmud that the teachings were originally written by Judas Iscariot, who traveled with Emmanuel to India after his crucifixion, along with Judas Thomas, Emmanuel's brother, and Mother Mary. And so, to answer my original question, which was centered around who wrote the Talmud, what we find is that it's mostly written by Judas, who was present at all of Emmanuel's lectures, both before the crucifixion event and after Emmanuel traveled and taught in India. Though it also seems very clear to me that Emmanuel's oldest son, Joseph, added the final touches to the pages. and also made at least one other copy which became known as the Book of Matthew. And here you have the table of contents. Critical biblical scholars like Herman Ribidos do not consider the Apostle Matthew to be the original author of this gospel. The Talmud was the original, and the book of Matthew is said to have come from the Talmud of Emmanuel. You have chapters, and then you have verses, as you can see. And we will go through a lot of the verses. We will go through a lot of the predictions. It's quite a detailed manuscript, going all the way to 36 chapters. The genealogy of Emmanuel is explained here. Adam was begotten by Semjaza, the leader of the celestial sons, who are the guardian angels of God, the great ruler of the travelers from afar. Semjaza, the celestial son and the guardian angel of God, the great ruler of the voyagers who travel here through vast expanses of the universe, took a terrestrial woman and begot Adam, the father of the white human population. And here, I know there are biases indicated in all translations. So when they mention race, that is the one flag that I see in this manuscript that presents what I think is somewhat biased, because race is only a construct, a recent construct. And you can see the lineages here that lead all the way to Jacob begot Joseph. Joseph was the husband of Mary, the mother of Emmanuel, who was impregnated by a distant descendant of the celestial son Rajiel, who was the guardian angel of the secret. And here we have the story of when Joseph found out that Mary was impregnated by a celestial son, not by God. While Joseph was thinking in this manner, behold, a guardian angel sent by Gabriel, the celestial son who had impregnated Mary, appeared and said, Joseph, Mary is betrothed to you, and you are to become her spouse. Do not leave her, because the fruit of her womb is chosen for a great purpose. Marry her in all openness, so you may be husband and wife before the people. Behold, the impregnation of Mary occurred 11,000 years after the procreation of Adam through the celestial son Semjaza, to fulfill the word of God, the ruler of those who travel from afar, who conveyed these words through the prophet Isaiah. Behold, a virgin will be impregnated by a celestial son before she is married to a man before the people. They will name the fruit of their womb Emmanuel, which translated means the one with godly knowledge. As a symbol and honor to God, through God's power and providential care, the earth was made to bear intelligent human life with the celestial sons, the travelers from the far reaches of the universe, mated with the women of earth. Behold, God and his followers came far from the depths of space, where they delivered themselves from a strong bondage, and created here a new human race and home with the early women of this earth. God deserves the honor of the people of earth, for behold, he is the true originator of the white and colored earth humans, and to him honor should be given. Except for him, there is nothing equal in form for these two lineages created by him. Besides him, therefore, people shall have no other God who created other human lineages in other parts of the earth. When Emmanuel was born in the stable at Bethlehem, in the shelter in the land of the Jews during the time of Herod Antipas, Tetrarch of Galilee and Perea, behold, wise men arrived in Jerusalem from the Orient and asked, "Where is the newborn King of wisdom of the Jews? We have seen a bright light in the sky and heard a voice saying, 'Follow the tail of the light, because the King of wisdom of the Jews is born, who will bring great knowledge. Therefore, we have come to worship the newborn King of wisdom. He shall possess the knowledge of God and be a son of the celestial son Gabriel. His knowledge will be boundless, as will his power to control human consciousness, so that humans may learn and serve creation.'" When Herod Antipas heard of this, he was frightened, and with him everyone in Jerusalem, because they feared that the newborn child would wield dreadful power. Herod Antipas called together all the chief priests and scribes from among the people and inquired of them where Emmanuel had been born. And they replied, "In Bethlehem, in the Jewish land, for thus it was written by the prophet Micah, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of the Jews, are by no means the least among the cities in Judea. For from you shall come forth the King of wisdom, who will bring forth great knowledge to the people of Israel, so that they may learn and serve creation.'"
Here beginneth the treatise of the boyhood of Jesus, according to Thomas. When Jesus was 5 years old, he took of the clay of a fish pond, and made of it 12 sparrows. And it was the Sabbath when Jesus did this amongst the boys of the Jews. And the boys of the Jews went away, and said to Joseph his father, "Behold, thy son was playing along with us. And he took clay, and made sparrows, which it was not lawful to do on the Sabbath, and he has broken it." And Joseph went along to the boy Jesus, and said to him, "Why hast thou done this?" And Jesus opened his hands, and ordered the sparrows, saying, "Go up into the air, and fly, nobody shall kill you." But a Pharisee who was with Jesus took an olive branch, and began to let the water out of the fountain which Jesus had made. And when Jesus saw this, he said to him in a rage, "Thou impious and ignorant sodomite, what harm have my works, the fountains of water, done thee? Behold, thou shalt become like a dry tree, having neither roots nor leaves nor fruit." And immediately he dried up, and fell to the ground, and died. And his parents took him away dead, and reproached Joseph, saying, "See what thy son has done. Teach him to pray, not to blaspheme." And a few days after, as Jesus was walking through the town with Joseph, one of the children ran up and struck Jesus on the arm. And Jesus said to him, "So thou shalt not finish thy journey." And immediately he fell to the ground, and died. And those who saw these wonderful things cried out to Joseph, "It is not right for such a boy to be among us." And Joseph went and brought him, and they said to him, "Go away from this place, but if thou must live with us, teach him to pray and not to blaspheme. Our children have been killed." Joseph called Jesus and reproved him, saying, "Why dost thou blaspheme? For these people who live here hate us." And Jesus said, "I know that these words are not mine, but thine. But I will hold my tongue for thy sake, and let them see to it in their wisdom." And immediately those who were speaking against Jesus became blind. And Joseph, seeing what Jesus had done, in a fury seized him by the ear. And Jesus said to Joseph in anger, "It is enough for thee to see me, not to touch me, for thou knowest not who I am. But if thou didst know, thou wouldst not make me angry. And although just now I am with thee, I was made before thee." One day, when Jesus was climbing on a certain house along with the children, he began to play with them. And one of the boys fell down through a back door and died immediately. And when the children saw this, they all ran away. But Jesus remained in the house. And when the parents of the boy who had died had come, they spoke against Jesus. Surely it was him that made him fall down, and they reviled him. And Jesus, coming down from the house, stood over the dead child, and with a loud voice called out the name of the child. Sinu, Sinu, rise and say whether it was I that made thee fall down. And suddenly he rose up and said, No, my Lord. And his parents, seeing such a great miracle done by Jesus, glorified God and adored Jesus. And Joseph, seeing that he had such favor and that he was increasing in stature, thought it right to take him to learn his letters, and he handed him over to another teacher to be taught. But Jesus was silent and made him no answer. Jesus said to the master, If thou art indeed a master, and if indeed thou knowest the letters, tell me the power of the A, and I shall tell thee the power of the B. Then his master was filled with fury and struck him on the head. And Jesus was angry and cursed him, and suddenly he fell down and died. And Jesus returned home, and Joseph gave orders to Mary, his mother, not to let him go out of the court of the house. And Jesus himself turned unto the Jews and said to them, Now let all them that see not see, and let them understand which understand not, and let the deaf hear, and let them arise which have died by my means. And when the child Jesus ceased speaking, all the afflicted were made whole, as many as had been afflicted by his word. And they durst not speak to him, and no man after that durst provoke him, lest he should curse him, and he should be maimed.
I say to you, exercise justice according to the natural laws of creation, so that you find the verdict in logic. Offer your love whenever it is warranted, and punish wherever the laws of nature demands punishment. Give to them who ask of you, if they make their request in honesty, and turn away from them who want to borrow from you in a dishonest way. You have heard it said, You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. However, I say to you, practice love and understanding according to the natural laws of creation, so that through logic you find the right action and perception. Offer your love where it is warranted, and despise where the laws of nature demand it. You shall be wise and acquire knowledge, because you shall become perfect in spirit as the creation which created you. Over the course of incarnations, you shall train your spirit and your consciousness and allow them to develop in perfection, so that you become one with creation. Be mindful of your piety, that you practice it before the people with correct words, lest you be accused of lying and thereby find no reward from them. Choose your words using natural logic and draw upon the knowledge and behavior of nature